The bright morning sun reflected off the red Ferrari like liquid fire, but for 5 long years, that beautiful machine had never moved an inch. It sat inside a climate-controlled glass garage worth more than most houses, surrounded by the world's finest tools and visited by some of the most expensive engineers on Earth. More than $2 million had been spent trying to revive it. Experts came from different countries. Specialists studied it. Mechanics with decades of experience examined every wire, every bolt, and every hidden system. Yet the Ferrari remained silent. And then one ordinary afternoon, a frustrated billionaire owner looked at a janitor holding a mop and made a challenge that would change both of their lives forever. Before we begin, if you believe kindness and second chances can change lives, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Whispering Stories. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to people around the world. The owner of the Ferrari was a woman named Celeste Hartwell. At 43, she was one of the most successful technology entrepreneurs in the country. Her company had transformed industries, and magazines regularly featured her among the world's most influential business leaders. People admired her success, but very few knew about the sadness she carried. 5 years earlier, Celeste's father had passed away after a long battle with illness. Before his death, he had given her the Ferrari. It wasn't simply a luxury car. It was his most treasured possession. Every weekend during her childhood, he would take her for long drives through winding country roads. Those journeys became some of her happiest memories. When he handed her the keys shortly before his death, he told her that the Ferrari represented persistence. Whenever life became difficult, she should remember that every machine, every problem, and every challenge had a solution somewhere. Only weeks after his passing, the Ferrari suddenly stopped working. At first, it seemed like a minor issue. But days turned into months. Months turned into years. One expert after another failed. The car became an obsession. Celeste spent fortunes trying to fix it. Not because she needed the vehicle, but because she felt as though repairing it meant preserving a piece of her father. The Ferrari became the one problem she could not solve. Every morning, she walked past the silent car. Every evening, she looked at it before leaving. The sight reminded her that even someone who seemed to have everything could still feel powerless. The building that housed her collection of cars employed dozens of workers. Among them was a quiet janitor named Rowan Mercer. Rowan was 62 years old. Most people barely noticed him. He arrived before sunrise each day. He swept floors, cleaned windows, emptied trash bins, and left quietly when his shift ended. He rarely spoke unless spoken to. Many assumed he had little education because of his job. Few cared enough to learn otherwise. For 5 years, Rowan watched experts arrive and leave. He watched mechanics carrying expensive equipment. He watched engineers arguing over diagnostics. And he watched Celeste grow increasingly heartbroken. One afternoon, after another team announced they had failed, frustration overwhelmed her. She stood in front of the Ferrari surrounded by disappointed specialists. The room felt heavy. The experts packed their equipment and left. Only Rowan remained nearby, mopping the polished floor. Celeste stared at the motionless vehicle and shook her head. $2 million. 5 years. Nothing. She laughed bitterly and muttered that perhaps she should let the janitor try next. To her surprise, Rowan calmly looked up. There was no anger in his eyes. No embarrassment. Only quiet confidence. He asked if she truly meant it. The room suddenly became silent. Celeste looked at him carefully. Something about his expression seemed different. Not arrogant. Not foolish. Just certain. Curious, she agreed. The challenge had begun. The next morning, Rowan arrived earlier than usual. Instead of carrying cleaning supplies, he brought an old leather notebook. The notebook looked decades old. Its pages were worn and stained from years of use. For hours, he studied the Ferrari. He didn't rush. He didn't use expensive scanners. He simply observed. He listened. He touched components carefully. Other employees watched with amusement. Some laughed quietly. Others took photographs. To them, the situation seemed ridiculous. A janitor attempting what world-class experts could not. But Rowan ignored them. As the days passed, he continued examining the car. Unlike the specialists, he focused on details others considered insignificant. The smell of the engine compartment. Tiny vibrations in certain components. Patterns in previous repair records. Every evening, he filled pages in his notebook. Celeste became fascinated. For the first time in years, someone appeared genuinely hopeful. 1 week later, Rowan made a surprising request. He asked for access to every maintenance record from the Ferrari's history. Thousands of pages were delivered. He spent entire nights studying them. As he read, a pattern emerged. A tiny inconsistency repeated itself through every failed repair attempt. Something nobody else had noticed. Something hidden beneath layers of assumptions. The breakthrough came on a bright afternoon. Sunlight streamed through the glass walls as Rowan carefully removed a panel deep inside the vehicle. Behind it sat a component almost nobody ever examined. Years earlier, during a routine repair, a microscopic manufacturing defect had developed within a custom electronic module. The flaw was so rare that most diagnostic systems never detected it. Every expert had focused on the symptoms. No one had identified the root cause. Except Rowan. When he explained his findings, disbelief filled the room. The explanation sounded almost impossible. Yet it made perfect sense. A replacement component was ordered immediately. 3 tense days passed. Employees gathered inside the garage when the part finally arrived. The atmosphere felt electric. Even people who doubted Rowan wanted to witness the outcome. Celeste stood near the driver's door. Her hands trembled. 5 years of disappointment had taught her not to hope too much. Still, her heart raced. Rowan installed the replacement. Then he stepped back. The garage became silent. The moment had arrived. Celeste slid into the driver's seat. She closed her eyes briefly and remembered her father. The smell of the leather seats. The laughter during long drives. The lessons he taught her about persistence. Then she pressed the ignition button. For a second, nothing happened. Everyone held their breath. And then the engine roared to life. The sound exploded through the building. Deep. Powerful. Alive. Some employees gasped. Others cheered. Several mechanics stood frozen in disbelief. Tears instantly filled Celeste's eyes. For the first time in 5 years, the Ferrari was breathing again. The sound carried memories she thought she had lost forever. She gripped the steering wheel and cried openly. Not because of the car itself. Because the impossible had finally become possible. When she stepped out, she walked directly toward Rowan. The elderly janitor stood quietly as everyone celebrated around him. He wasn't smiling triumphantly. He wasn't seeking recognition. He looked relieved. As though helping someone heal mattered more than proving himself right. That afternoon, Celeste invited Rowan to lunch. During their conversation, she learned the truth. Decades earlier, Rowan had been a brilliant automotive engineer. He had worked on high-performance vehicles and experimental systems. His career had been promising. Then tragedy struck. A devastating accident claimed his wife and young daughter. The grief shattered him. Unable to continue his previous life, he left engineering behind. For years, he drifted between jobs. Eventually, he became a janitor. Not because he lacked talent. Because he needed peace. The world had forgotten his brilliance. But the brilliance had never disappeared. As Rowan shared his story, Celeste realized something profound. For years she had judged success by titles, achievements, and appearances. Yet the person who solved the greatest challenge of her life wore work boots and carried a mop. Talent often hides where people least expect it. The following week, Celeste announced something that stunned everyone. She offered Rowan a senior engineering position within her company. The salary was extraordinary. The benefits were life-changing. But Rowan hesitated. After years away from engineering, he doubted himself. He worried he no longer belonged. Celeste reminded him of what he had accomplished. She reminded him that wisdom does not disappear simply because others stop noticing it. Eventually, Rowan accepted. The months that followed transformed both of their lives. Rowan's ideas improved projects throughout the company. Engineers sought his advice. Young employees learned from his experience. His confidence slowly returned. For the first time in decades, he felt valuable again. Meanwhile, Celeste found something she had been missing. Purpose beyond success. She launched programs focused on discovering hidden talent within overlooked workers. Custodians. Maintenance staff. Receptionists. People often ignored despite possessing remarkable skills and knowledge. The initiative changed hundreds of lives. Promotions increased. Training opportunities expanded. Employees felt seen. Respected. Valued. And it all began because a billionaire chose to give a janitor one unexpected chance. Years later, the Ferrari remained one of Celeste's most cherished possessions. Not because it was rare. Not because it was expensive. But because every time the engine started, it reminded her of an unforgettable lesson. People are more than the jobs they hold. More than the clothes they wear. More than the assumptions others make about them. Sometimes the person everyone overlooks carries the answer everyone else has been searching for. And sometimes a simple act of trust can unlock a future no one imagined possible. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Whispering Stories. Your support helps us continue sharing meaningful stories that inspire people around the world. Special request, comment below with the words, "Everyone deserves a chance," if you believe hidden talent can be found anywhere. As the sun set one evening, Celeste drove the Ferrari along the same country road she once traveled with her father. The golden daylight painted the horizon, and the engine hummed steadily beneath her. She smiled through tears, knowing that the lesson her father had taught her years ago was true after all. Every problem has a solution. Every person has value. And sometimes, the greatest miracles arrive carrying nothing more than a mop, an old notebook, and a forgotten dream.